Okay, we're going to read Exodus chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. And now, behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I shall say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And God furthermore said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will pay heed to what you say, and you, with the elders of Israel, will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it. And after that he will let you go. And I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor, and the woman who lives in her house, articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians. Okay. I like that. Plunder. Yes, you will plunder the Egyptians. So, let's go back. Verse 1, we see Moses is a shepherd. He's shepherding his father-in-law's flocks. We talked about last week, Mount Horeb is the same as Mount Sinai. And this burning bush, it's very clear here that that's God himself, because God, in verse 4, God called to him from the midst of the bush. And then we talked about the holiness of God. He's verse 5, do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. He could not approach the Lord with his shoes on. He had to take his sandals off in order to be in the presence. God is holy, and unholiness cannot survive his presence. He's a consuming fire, consumes everything unholy. And then Moses was afraid to look at God. And then I'll just pick up on these. God, the Lord told me. So this is just Moses, his sheep, and a burning bush. All this is taking place, and that's who's present. And he assures Moses, I have surely seen the affliction of my people. I have given heed to their cry because of their chastisement. I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians. And so in that in-between time, it's been a long time. The persecution started before Moses was born, which is why they were throwing the babies into the Nile. So before that, and then he spent 40 years in Egypt, and now he's had 40 years in Midian. So over 80 years of severe oppression. It was a terrible environment. And this part too, so Moses kind of made himself known. They rejected him, so he flees to Midian. So if you're a Hebrew and you're living in Egypt and you're in the midst of this persecution and it's been going on for over 80 years, you're thinking God's forgotten you. They don't know God's at work. They can't see it, because from their appearance, nothing has changed. The Pharaoh's changed, the persecution has not. So, but I just think that's so important to remember when we have those terrible times, when it feels like God's out at work. Just remember, he doesn't always work in the big, which he's going to in a few chapters. We're going to see him in a mighty way. But the in-between time, it's behind the scenes, and it's just not seen. But that doesn't mean he's not at work.
Like he's setting the stage. Totally.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And when he acts, it's so fast. When he finally moves, I was thinking about Joseph, and he sat in prison for 2 years after interpreting the dream, and then, boom, in one day, he's taken out of prison, cleaned up, and then put in second command in Egypt. It's just fast once it starts to happen.
I feel like that happens in my life, everybody's life, and then after it happens, I'm like, oh, God,
I know.
Forgive all those times that I didn't trust you.
I just had a moment this week on why would I ever doubt him? He's so
But we all do. We all do.
We do. I know. But and then you feel terrible because he's so faithful and he's so good. And so that's what we're going to see here. And you saw at the end they're going to plunder the Egyptians. So one day they're going to be slaves, oppressed, beaten, and then boom, they're going to be so free. They're taking items from the Egyptians. So very free. But it happens quickly. When it happens, it's just the in-between time when we can't see him at work. And it is hard. It's just very hard. But then when he comes through, it's so perfect. It's so right.
Better than what you could have lined up.
Oh, so
I'm just thinking about our move here.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think about a lot of other times, where, like you said, it just happens and it aligns so, everything just fits.
It's perfect.
Better than I could have even thought that it could fit together.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's easy. It was easy,
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And he's so good and so faithful.
Well, and you can be on the depths of despair one day.
Yes.
And just 8 hours later, everything changes.
Oh, yeah. Well, in fact, I told my husband came home for lunch yesterday, and I'm like, my life is a roller coaster. And I said, I'm at a peak now. I just had a really good conversation. I'm at a peak. And by the time we got home, I talked to our daughter. I'm plummeted. It's just, yeah.
Life.
But anyway, it's just, yeah. But when it does happen,
it lets you know that not to get so discouraged the next time.
Well, you would hope. In an ideal situation, I don't know. Ideally, yes.
It does overall, but in the moment, you have those moments. You
But
know,
that's
where you're-
why, like what he talked about Sunday in church. Those of you who are going through Hebrews in Sunday school, it's encouraging one another. That's why we all. Oh, that's why it's so important. You stay in church, you stay plugged in, and then those of us who aren't in that can just help remind you. We can read passages like this and remind each other of how faithful God is, how perfect is His timing, and anyway, it just helps. It's
I always think that part of us need more fertilizer than others. We're down in that valley getting dumped on, so we'll grow more.
That's true. Nothing grows at the top. That is so true.
And some of us derail when we go bottom. So we gotta get back on.
I
Some people
know.
like to be down in the roots.
No, that's where you get dumped on.
I know, I'm just kidding.
That God knows each one of us
Yes.
intimately.
Yes, He does.
Each one, and He's got His finger on each one of us all the time.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
though we don't realize it always, but He's got
He
His finger on
does.
everything we do all the time.
That's why I love the words. I have surely seen the affliction of my people. I've given heed to their cry, even though they can't see it. He's really working. So He's given heed to their cry. I am aware of their suffering, and I have come down to deliver them. And I just want to point this out, as we do every week. God is the deliverer. He delivered the Egyptians. He delivered Joseph. He delivered Daniel. He delivered Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And He delivered you and I from the bondage of sin and death. He's the deliverer. He's going to use Moses here, but God's the deliverer. Okay. And then, again in verse 9, behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. I have seen the oppression. And I know sometimes it feels like God doesn't see or He doesn't hear. This is just such a good reminder. And then verse 10, therefore come now and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. So He's sending Moses. Moses is going to be the man, but God is the power behind it.
So He's sending him back to Pharaoh.
Back to Pharaoh, yes. But Moses said to God, who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And I mean, we're going to learn as we go throughout this book, Moses is a genuinely humble man. And I mean, and he's been humbled, and he's going to continue to grow in humility. You know, he went from Egypt, an heir in Egypt, to a shepherd that the Egyptians loathe. They find them loathsome. So now he's been a shepherd for 40 years.
Do you think this Pharaoh knows him? I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because I
think history kind of teaches if it's Ramesses that they probably grew up together.
Okay.
They're probably contemporaries, is what I
Yeah.
understand.
So he's probably a little angrier with Moses because of.
I mean, I think there was probably a little rivalry there. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, Moses was amazing. His education, and we'll look at that passage in a little bit. But no, that's perfect. That's good to point out.
Because sometimes I wonder if people. I mean, he lived that. I wonder,
Yes.
what age is this Pharaoh?
Right.
That's what my question in my head is how old is this man?
But now Moses has been out of that
Right.
system, out of that education. He's not really using the education that he received in leading people. You use very different skills in shepherding sheep. They're different skill sets. So out of practice, it's been a long time. So
Don't you imagine the Pharaoh sees him as ungrateful? Having been plucked from the river and given the life of
Right.
a prince.
yeah,
That's
and
what I
then to
was
turn
thinking.
on him.
Yeah, the very
Yeah.
idea.
It's like, look what all we did for you.
Mhm.
We allowed you.
forgotten his upbringing.
Oh, he
No.
no, and he's not ungrateful for it. It was just preparation for something they didn't anticipate. In fact, for something they were trying to prevent, actually. And I love how, so Moses says, who am I? And then God responds, certainly I will be with you. And I love it because he's kind of saying it
He
doesn't
doesn't
really matter.
answer.
No.
Who am I? No.
It doesn't even matter.
I.
Yeah.
Kind of like, you know.
Yes, who you
That
are
even
doesn't really
answers
matter.
question.
No, he doesn't even address
Like,
it
we don't
because
have
it
time for
doesn't.
this.
It's irrelevant. It's
But I love how God
absolutely.
answers that with, no, who am
Yes,
I?
the assurance.
You know,
Yes.
we all ask that question.
I'm just picking, but you know, it's like we don't have time for this. What kind of mission for you, Moses?
Well, I think we
doesn't
wanted
matter.
to see show who he was.
Yes.
Look,
I
doesn't
know.
matter who you are.
Exactly, and that it doesn't matter who the person is, and we've seen it throughout Genesis. It doesn't matter who the person is; it's the God who's behind him. That's all that matters. And I mean, and notice that he says, "Certainly I will be with you," and that's all you need. That's all you even need to know. I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When, not if, when, because God's behind us, when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. So we're going to find ourselves right back at Mount Sinai in Exodus chapter 19. And they are going to worship God there. And it's going to be a great chapter. But, I mean, I thought that was interesting because you would think, like, in my head, he would need confirmation before he approaches Pharaoh, and here but that's because we know what comes after that, the 40 years of wandering. He's going to need that reminder that God is with him. He's going to go back to that point when they're grumbling and remember God has called him, God has sent, God has equipped him, God is behind it, and then that's when he's going to need the real confirmation, is when they're worshiping at Mount Sinai. Okay, now we'll pick up in 13.
Can I just
Yes,
interject? Sorry.
please. No, please.
I love how it says, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham,
Yeah, I was just
Isaac,
reading
and
that.
Jacob. And I think that's significant. I was with Abraham. You remember that? Like, he wants us to remember, like, I was faithful to him. I was also the God of Isaac. We know the story of that, and we know the story of how he was with Jacob. So
Yes.
that's a reminder of his
Yes.
faithfulness. You know,
Exactly.
it's not just I'm the God of, when he's listing off, there's a reason why he said.
Yes, and keep that in mind because when we get to
Says
his
that over and over
name, yes, and it's going to be so important, and he's going to need that reminder. And I think that's why he says it so often, is because that's huge.
Because we're people, we need to be reminded. Remember what I did?
I know, and they didn't have the privilege of the written word.
Right.
No.
We have the written word. They did not have the privilege of this. It would be so much more difficult to remember when it's not just right here. And then we take it for granted and don't use it like we should and could. Okay, verse 13.
I like how thorough, because I mean that's pretty thorough the way he goes through that.
Yes. Then Moses said to God, "Behold, and he says here, I am going to the sons of Israel. I shall say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?" And I put in my notes a much better question, not who am I, who are you? I mean, what shall I say to him? And then God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And it's so interesting in reading the different commentaries, and even like this has a little footnote on the translating I am that I am. It has different, this one says, I will be what I will be. Another one says, I am what I will be. I am what I was. There's so many different renderings. So my favorite, I read a commentary a long time ago, but he defined this, he's called it a peculiar verb, and it encompasses am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been. It just encompasses all of that. He just is. He was, he is, he's been,
Every tense.
being.
It's a conjugation of every level of be.
Be.
I'm trying to think.
Yes.
Of it all.
Yes.
Yeah, all. What am I trying to say? The all. One that always existed.
The
Right, what am I
eternal,
trying to say? I don't know.
eternal.
Something. The one that always has been. Will
Yes.
be. Like,
Yes,
like Alyssa said,
exactly.
whatever she said.
He who has been, yes. I think in Revelation he says the one who is, who was, and who is to be, or who is to come. I mean, it just encompasses his eternal, forever nature. And
Can I say real quick?
Yes, please.
I was sat and had a Passover dinner with a Jewish family who was Christian leading a Passover, and they said that the way they look at it is kind of like how we make up words that we combine other words, like spork.
Yeah.
How it has contents of the other words, but you still know what the two separate words are. That's kind of what they did. They took all those translations and just kind of squished them together. So it doesn't necessarily have the entire translation of every single word, but bits and pieces so you know the full meaning
Yes,
of it.
exactly. And I
It's
have a
impression.
I can't get my computer to do Hebrew. I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't want to waste too much time. But I do have a picture of that and all the different verbs, and they look just alike with just a
slight
Yes.
change here and there.
yes, and it just encompasses.
What website is
Yes,
that?
I don't know. I have the book. I don't know. I couldn't find a good online, but it encompasses everything. His eternal nature, and so he's self-existent. Our very existence is dependent on him. I mean, it has to be the right temperature. We have to have the right amount of oxygen. I mean, we are so dependent. Our existence, he doesn't depend on anything or anyone. He just is. So his eternal nature, and then the other aspect of this name, and I just love it. It's covenant making, covenant keeping. And like, I know I'm just going to wear this example out, but it was so perfect because we were studying it from Genesis last Christmas time, and the UPS had that little incident where they made the promise to get the packages out and delivered on time. Well-intentioned, under normal circumstances, could have. But because there was an unforeseen circumstance that was out of their control, they couldn't keep their promise. But here's where Yahweh is set apart. He makes a covenant and he can keep it because there's no such thing as an unforeseen circumstance. There's no such thing as a circumstance out of his control. And we're seeing that it's like against all odds, at the very last second, he comes through in this amazing, just a way. I don't even know the right words, but so this is the name Yahweh, YHWH. It's the name they didn't pronounce because it was so sacred. That's why there's no vowels in it. I don't know when they started pronouncing it, but you'll know as we go through the scriptures. And I passed out that thing on the names of God, which I don't remember, but I know that in the King James Version, they're very consistent. This came from their translation, the King James. So when you see in the scriptures, you'll see God, big G, little o, little d. The original Hebrew word was Elohim. And so they were consistent. Every time they came across Elohim, they would translate it God. And then Yahweh, YHWH, it was all caps. So every time in the Hebrew when they came across that word, they would translate it all caps, Lord, capital L. So every time you're reading, the King James, this is their, is a key or a legend, this is theirs, so it's very consistent. The others are consistent. I mean, I think NIV, I've found a few that maybe weren't, but it's very consistent. You can just almost count on it. If it's all caps, and I think even one place it's all caps G-O-D, and it was originally Yahweh, so if it's all caps. And then when you see Most High God, it was originally El Elyon in the Hebrew, and that's the one that tells fire what to do, like he's sovereign, walk on water, tells buoyancy what to do, controls everything. And then capital L, little O-R-D is Adonai, and we translate master. And then El Shaddai is Almighty. And then, anyway, and it's pretty consistent. So every time you're reading in the scriptures, when you come across all caps Lord, it was originally Yahweh. And you just think of covenant making, covenant keeping. And it's so appropriate here because when we were in Genesis, he made the covenants. And he confirmed them, and he made them, and he confirmed them. Now, he's getting ready to show himself as the covenant keeping, that he is the Most High God. It's been 400 years. They've been everything exactly like he said. And now comes the deliverance part. And he even says you'll come out with great possessions. He's going to keep every aspect of that promise. And so that's what makes it so exciting here. Any other thoughts or on Yahweh?
I'm just thinking about Annie Grant's song,
Which one?
El Shaddai.
Oh yeah, Shaddai.
That was one of my. That's my favorite song.
Everybody knows how to
And
play
so,
the piano.
and so I'm like sitting there listening to that song in my head while you're reading this.
I'm thinking right there with
It's
you.
a great
It's a
song.
beautiful song. It's one of my
Yes.
favorites.
Well, and let's go back and look in Genesis 15 and just look at that covenant
I
again.
kind of didn't know too much about me. Like, you're not supposed to know what's
And
going on
I mean,
in my
that's
head.
how, when Yahweh makes a covenant, when God makes a covenant, that's how you can know for certain. That's how we can say with Abraham, we are fully persuaded that he is able. Because, I mean, nothing's going to happen that he can't not do his word. He can't not. His word is so
I
sure.
love Kay Arthur. One thing I remember
Yes.
her always saying is, and she did I wrote a book on
Yeah, I
something
have.
about or what or
Yes.
whatever. But it says that everything. The one thing that I remember, it's been years since I read it, was everything God does is based on covenant
Yes.
in His Word. Everything.
Yes.
Jesus, and then just in the Old
That
Testament,
is
I mean,
such a
everything
good-
that He does is based on covenant.
That is so good.
It's right along with what you're.
Yes, that is very good. Yeah, that's a great reminder. So in Genesis chapter 15, beginning in verse 13, and God said to Abram, know for certain, so that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. They will be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. And I'm just a reminder, prophecy is not meant to be a riddle. He didn't give this so they'd sit around for the rest of their lives. Yeah, who's going to be the country that oppresses us? Which nation? That's not what it's for. It's a promise. It's a promise to which they can cling. And when this is taking place, they have this promise that they're going to be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, so they don't think something strange is happening. And it's supposed to be a reminder that He hasn't forgotten them, even though when you're living it, it's hard. But it's supposed to be a reminder you've not been forgotten. It's just not time yet. And the other thing, when we're talking about God just boom, out of nowhere, I mean, 400 years they're being oppressed and everything. It's got to be time. We've got to be close again. And then it's not like He gradually sets the stage. I mean, it's like all that's done behind scenes. As far as the Hebrew people know, it's just like boom, out of nowhere, He answers. And then you can look back and say, wow, He was preparing for that all along. We just didn't see it. Okay, so know for certain. And then verse 14, but I will also judge the nation whom they will serve. And afterward they will come out with many possessions, which is how our chapter today ends. As for you, son to Abraham, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. And I did find the cross-reference verse on that, and it's 1 Kings 21, and it's 25 and 26. It's in the context of Ahab and Jezebel, but it had to do with the Amorites being idolatrous, very idolatrous, and having evil hearts. Okay, so then verse 17, and it came about when the sun had set, it was very dark, and behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch, which passed between these pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants, and He says, I have given, even though it's going to be a long time, it's done. I have given this land from the river of Egypt, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenite, Kenizzite, Cadmonite, Hittite, Perizzite, Rephaim, Amorite, Canaanite, Girgashite, and Jebusite. So He's given in that one. But I love how He says, I have given, even though it's way in the future. It's done. Done deal.
You know what's hitting me is him thinking, okay, God, I don't want to do this. You know?
Well, I think he's talking to a burning bush that's not being consumed. And he's told to take his shoes off and not to come in His presence with his shoes on.
So
And
he's
so
a
I
little in
feel-
shock, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming. It is a fearful thing to I mean, it's,
And
he
he's not
should be
asking.
afraid.
He's not asking Moses. He's telling him.
Yes,
this
he's
is what
telling
you-
him.
This is what you're doing.
Yes, I know, and I was saying, and we'll see it more next week, but
Can you imagine
Like-
us being told that right now to just, get up out of your chair and you're going to go
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this?
Oh, well, I know it was, at the same time, he kind of knew, we read from Acts, he
Okay.
knew that he was their deliverer at that
Oh,
time.
he already knew that? Okay.
And he assumed that his brothers had known that too, but they didn't really.
Oh,
But I mean,
wow.
he
Okay.
so he kind of had some
So
understanding.
he already had a concept of this. Okay.
But he's been out of it for 40 years.
Okay. So he
away.
already knew that he was kind of the deliverer.
Yes. And I, who knows what was in his head for the last 40 years. I don't know.
Well, I think he'd been being groomed.
He's being groomed as a shepherd to lead the. God always trains
But
his
the Lord
people in
been
pasture.
working with him.
Yes,
There's bound to have
exactly.
been some mental processes going
Oh,
on.
and the humility. I mean, he's taken him from the Prince of Egypt to he was raised in that culture that you despise shepherds. They were despised people. They were loathed people. And so he's been there. I think he's been greatly humbled. I think we're going to continue to see, and this is just consistent. Paul did it too. But the more they grow in their walk, the more humble they become. Like, drawing near to God does not puff up. That would be a Pharisee. Like, Mark, I can do this, and it puffs up. Religion puffs us up. But drawing near to God and truly growing in your faith brings such humility. But there is a fine line when we say, I'm not able. That's healthy. When we come to the place where we know if this is accomplished, it had nothing to do with me. Like, it was so God doing it because I don't have these qualities. But then you cross a line when you say, I can't do this on my own, and I refuse to trust you. Not even factoring God into it. I can't do this on my own. So there's a fine line between being humble and then actually being arrogant. By saying I don't need God, or let me polish up my skills before I do your will. And it's not factoring him into. So I think there's a healthy acknowledging our. If you've ever watched American Idol tryouts, we're so grateful for people who recognize their limitations. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's when you say, I can't, and God can't do it through me. That's when you cross the line. It's okay to say, I can't, and if this is accomplished, God is amazing. Okay, so verse 15. He says, the God, did I have a cross reference in there? Because I know I wanted to read this one in John. Yeah, John 8:58. This is like one of my favorite passages. I kind of read John 8:58. I'll start. I'm trying to figure out where to start because I want to read the whole chapter, but I'll start in 54, I guess. Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God." He's talking to the Pharisees, and they do. They say he's our God. "And you have not come to know him, but I know him. And if I say that I do not know him, I shall be a liar like you. But I do know him and keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." The Jews therefore said to him, "You are not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham?" Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." Therefore they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. So, they understood when he said, before Abraham was, I am, they understood he was calling himself God. They understood that term meant God, and that's why they tried to stone him, because they thought he was being blasphemous. And as it turned out, they were the ones who were blaspheming. But anyway. Okay. But I just love that before Abraham was, I am. Okay, now we'll really pick up. So back in Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. And God furthermore said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is my memorial name to all generations." So, and like you said, he's built a reputation. And this is one thing we're really going to see in Exodus. He doesn't just out of the blue say, "Okay, obey me." I mean, he makes himself known in such a mighty way, and we have witnesses and testimony, and he's building a reputation. Then he says, "Trust me." But he makes himself known, which he doesn't have to. I mean, he's God. He can just demand it. But he makes himself known and builds their reputation, and then he says, "Trust me." It's just his gracious kindness. And I think that's one of the things I really walked away with looking at chapters 3 and 4 is just the humanity of Moses. He's just so normal, and I just appreciate this. Although, actually, in earthly times, he was an amazing man. But, I mean, he's just a human. And yet, God is so patient, and he's so kind. And so I think that really comes out in these 2 chapters, just his kindness and his patience. And then, go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, "The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt." So that's the message from God to his people. "And I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey." And again, he's made this covenant, he's promised it, and it's meant to be an encouragement to them. He doesn't explain how he's going to do it. He doesn't have to. He doesn't explain it. He just says, I will bring you up out of the affliction. Again, he's concerned, he's aware. And then verse 18, "And he assures Moses, and they will pay heed to what you say. And you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God." And remember, Moses has done it before, and it really didn't go well. Did I have that in there to read in Acts again? Let's look at Acts 7 again.
I'm sorry, Acts 1.
Chapter 7, I can't remember the verse, like 22, 24.
It's all chilly.
I'm sorry, Acts what?
Acts 7, we'll start in 22. "And Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians, and he was a man," and we've got to remember this for next chapter too, "a man of power in words and deeds. But when he was approaching the age of 40, it entered his mind to visit his brethren, the sons of Israel. And when he saw one of them being treated unjustly, he defended him and took vengeance for the oppressed by striking down the Egyptian. And he supposed that his brethren understood that God was granting them deliverance through him, but they did not understand. And on the following day he appeared to them as they were fighting together, and he tried to reconcile them in peace, saying, Men, your brethren, why do you injure one another? But the one who is injuring his neighbor pushed him away, saying, Who made you ruler and judge over us? You do not mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday, do you? At this remark Moses fled and became an alien in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. Oh, I'll just keep reading because this is where we are. And after 40 years he had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai, and that's how Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb are the same, in the flame of a burning thorn bush, and said, and when Moses saw it, he began to marvel at the sight, and as he approached to look more closely, there came the voice of the Lord, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and the God of Jacob. And Moses shook with fear and would not venture to look. But the Lord said to him, Take off the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt and have heard their groans. I have come down to deliver them. Come now, and I will send you to Egypt. Then Moses, whom they disowned, saying, Who made you a ruler and a judge, is the one whom God sent to be both ruler and a deliverer with the help of the angel who appeared to him in the thorn bush. And so they had disowned him. They had rejected him. So, of course, there would be a little anxiety going back.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't receive him the first time. You know, maybe Moses did it prematurely, as some commentary have suggested. Maybe he needed to do that to see that if the people follow Moses, it's not because of Moses. It's because God it's his timing and he's divinely intervened. And that's where I tend to lean.
When it says that they refused him or rejected him, that reminds me of how the Pharisees rejected Christ.
Yes.
That's in parallel.
Exactly. And we saw it with Joseph too. That's all pointing to Christ. And in fact, that whole speech Stephen's giving in chapter 7, that's the point he's making to the Pharisees. And you're just like your fathers who rejected Joseph and Moses. That's the whole point of his speech. It's so good. So
Just amazing how even all throughout the Old Testament, it's just like everything just points to Christ in such a unique way.
it's amazing. That's how you know it's the same author. It's just, and it's all moving us towards reconciliation with God.
Jesus in Genesis. Like, we had a minister in our old church to preach this message, Jesus in Genesis, you know. Like, he starts there with Adam and Eve and the coverings and...
Exactly. The gospel is spelled. The gospel's there from Genesis.
I remember the first time I realized that. It was, like, overwhelming. Like,
Yes.
what?
I know.
That represents Jesus? Like, it was
Yeah.
kinda,
I know, because you learn these stories as a child, and then
But you
all of
don't-
a sudden,
I didn't put that together until I was much
No.
older. Like,
Yes.
what? It's there? Like, that's a
Yes.
picture, a representation of that?
it's all pointing. Yes.
The land of milk and honey refers to heaven, doesn't it? I mean,
Yes,
that's
the
like heaven.
promised
Yeah,
land.
promised land.
Yes, which is what we're learning in Hebrews. Yes. It's just, yes, everything is pointing to Christ. Which, to your point, he does nothing out of covenant.
Yeah.
So everything is a fulfillment of his word. That's why his word's complete, and he's not adding or subtracting. We're not to add or subtract. It's complete, and he doesn't act outside of it. Okay. Oh, where was I? Okay, I was in verse 18. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, and they will heed to what you say. So before they did not, and I think Moses needed to know that they weren't following him because of his amazing education in Egypt. His powerful words and deeds. It had nothing to do with Abraham. I mean, with Moses, it had everything to do with the God of Moses. And then notice he's, and you with the elders of Israel. He's not going alone. To the point that he made Sunday in church. He wasn't doing this alone. You will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness. Notice they're not saying, we're packing our bags or moving to Canaan. They're asking for 3 days, and that's going to be so significant when we get to the Red Sea. They're asking for 3 days journey, and that's it. They're not asking for their freedom, which that just shows you the hardness of Pharaoh's heart, and blind, hard, irrational, because he won't even let him go for 3 days.
That will put behind his work schedule.
Yes, I know. But boy, he's really going to, it's going to be way worse because he wouldn't. And then notice too, and this made me think of our study in Galatians this summer, go on a 3 days journey to the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. It's not freedom for the sake of freedom. It's freedom to serve him. It's the same way we're delivered from the bondage of sin and death so that we can now obey. Like, we now have an option. We can now obey the Lord. We can choose to obey. We can choose to delight in his word. And it's just, so we're set free, but it's for a purpose. It's not just freedom for the sake of freedom. It's freedom to worship.
Do you know if there's anything significant in the 3 days journey? Is that
Oh, it's going to be very significant. Yes. Yes, it's going to be very significant because that's all they're asking for. I know. Well, actually, you have to wait till chapter.
Or, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, 12.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
From trial to crucifixion, 3 days.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that
I mean,
right?
it's-
I didn't think of that.
We'll get there.
I don't have anything that's significant. It's just they were only asking for 3 days, and like what we learned in Genesis is that the system that they set up during the famine, everything belonged to the Pharaoh. So they belong to the Pharaoh, and they're only going for 3 days. But when Pharaoh dies, like their commitment or their obligation, their ownership was the Pharaoh. So when he died, they were free. Had he lived, they would have had to return in 3 days because they would still be obligated to Egypt. But because of the way it was set up, everything belonged to Pharaoh. When that Pharaoh died, they were free. So that was it had to do with their agreement or whatever. They belonged to Pharaoh. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. And anyway, that's all it means. They were just asking for 3 days, but because he dies in the Red Sea, now they are so free. And, I just think, well, I'll wait till we get there because I'm going to mess it up if I try.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Okay. No, it's so good. Okay. 19. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. And remember, he was compelling the Hebrew people to work. Well, now he's going to be compelled. But this is God talking, and he tells Moses, I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go. So in other words, it's going to look like you're failing. You're going to go to the king. And aren't you so grateful God tells us these things in advance? So he doesn't think, see, I was right. Who am I? This isn't going well. You would think you were failing. You would think you weren't doing what you were called to do. But God told him in advance, he is not going to let you go. So there's no surprises, there's no discouragement, even though there's probably some discouragement, but there's no surprises there. They've been told up front. I just think about that when we get to the New Testament. Those who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. We've been told in advance. It's not that we're being defeated. It's just God's all-knowing. And he told us in advance. And what is it, Peter? Do not act as if something strange were happening, because you've been told in advance. And so that's what I think here. So God said, I can just lay your head down and nap. There's no sweeter rest than when you're hearing the word. Okay, so God tells Moses up front, I know. And if God says, I know, you can just count on it. The king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. And then God says, so I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all of my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it. And after that, he will let you go.
I think my favorite is you'll plunder the Egyptians.
Yes.
I think I like that.
I thought it was interesting, too.
I have never noticed that.
Oh, that's going to be significant,
I've always
too.
heard that, okay, I don't know all the significance, but whenever there was like any kind of war, there was always a plunder, right? They
Yes.
always walked out with gold and
Yes.
some of their stuff,
Yes.
you know? But I don't know all the meanings behind it all. But
Oh,
I've
it's
heard
good.
that was very common. That
Yes, it was very common. It's
the
not...
way to remember what God did. Was that a
But-
part of remembrance, or what
Well,
was it? Do you know?
he just said they're going into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord. Well, they've been slaves for 400 years. They have nothing. So when they get to Mount Sinai again and they worship the Lord, he's going to tell them about building the tabernacle. And they're going to have gifts to bring.
That's okay.
Otherwise, they wouldn't
That's
have
right.
anything to bring. Oh my God, we could just.
That's right. Okay.
Let me just take a little side note
But
to
they were
Jehovah.
given- they
I'm
were
just going to
given all
talk
the
about Jehovah
stuff.
Jireh because we learned about that in Genesis. He requires a sacrifice for our sins. He requires atonement for our sins. But then he provides it because he's so good. That's what it means that he's our provider. If he requires it, he's going to provide it. And he's going to ask them to build a tabernacle so he can dwell among them. He's going to provide them. Because it makes no sense when you're packing up and you're moving that you're going to plunder because you downsize when you move. You don't acquire more. Especially they didn't have U-Hauls. There were no U-Hauls. I mean, they were just carrying this stuff. And Yes. So God's providing what they're going to need. It's just, oh my goodness, it's so good.
I love how too God like didn't need Moses. He really didn't need him for any of this at all.
No, he didn't.
But I mean, he chose to use him.
Yes.
You know, and now God chooses to use us, but he really doesn't.
He doesn't need us. I know. It's
need
just his
us.
way, and it doesn't even make sense, but it's his way, and we're so
Which
grateful.
is a good way, but I
I
mean,
know, because it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing, especially knowing he could do it without us.
and then knowing like that verse that says the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Like
Yes.
God
It
can
really is.
steer his
Yes.
heart to do
Whatever.
whatever
Yeah.
he wants.
We're back to the Most High God.
I
Yes.
think we were chosen by God.
I know, and it's so...
That God can even
Overwhelming.
use people that aren't believers.
Our believers, right?
Yes.
Like he used Pharaoh, and Pharaoh didn't even know he was being used.
I know,
He had no
but
clue that he
it's
was
like he's...
carrying out God's
He was
plan.
using the
But it's
magicians
like he
too.
said Sunday night. It's all for the glory of God. It brought glory to God. So you reject him and you have a hard heart, you're still going to glorify God. He will get the glory in the end. He absolutely will get all the glory in the end. So, oh my goodness, thank goodness he's chosen us and we're his. It's just such a privilege. Okay, any other? Okay, we were talking about, I think this is so interesting. So God's going to compel Pharaoh to let the people go. But he says, my hand, okay, I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt. And that's the same language that was used to describe what Moses did to the Egyptian. He struck the Egyptian. It's the same language because he was trying to send the message to the people. I'm going to do this pointing to what God's going to do to Egypt. Going to strike the Egyptians. And so the same language. But he says, strike Egypt. We call them the 10 plagues. But God here calls them the 10 miracles. But he doesn't tell Moses how many. He just says you're not going to have success at first, but he doesn't really tell him there's going to be 10 plagues. But so I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles. So I like how he uses that word. Which I shall do in the midst of it. And after that, he will let you go. Not only will he let you go, he's going to be begging you to leave, and you can't get out there fast enough. And then in verse 21, and I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed, which is exactly what he had already promised. And to your point, he can't operate outside of his covenant. For every woman shall ask of her neighbor, and the woman who lives in her house, articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians. Which, to your point, the victory in battle, it's so amazing because they're not soldiers. They're slaves. Shepherds, slaves. They're not soldiers at all. I mean, they are just low shepherd
But they've got some
slaves.
strength. They've been loading sand and rocks and
Yeah, they're
They're-
which is good because
they're
they're carrying all
physically
that
fit.
stuff
Yes.
when they
But again,
leave.
God didn't use their strength. as
Right.
an army.
Right.
Exactly.
Like in Jericho, he didn't use their strength and their numbers. He did it all himself.
Yes, and that's what's so amazing. If we could just keep that in mind, and then as we gather together, remind each other when those times get there, it's not our strength. And he doesn't even use all of the education and the skills that Moses had. I mean, it's like, what does Paul say? I count all but loss. You know, just
Moses was a shepherd, and then he shepherded the flock through
Yes.
the wilderness.
yes. And what's so fascinating, and I can't remember if someone pointed out here last week, but as he's shepherding these last 40 years, he's learning the terrain.
Yes, he learned.
He's learning everything about the terrain and the
When
land.
you can manage a flock of sheep, I think you could probably do pretty well with people. Too.
I don't know, people talk.
I know,
talk. Yeah.
And Moses got pretty irritated with it.
Exactly, and therein lies the problem. We have a mouth. But the other, like, I know, and they're going to grumble. It's like with King David, when he was running for his life for those 15 years, then when he became king of Israel and he led the military, I mean, he knew that terrain so well. I mean, just God is so good and he's so thorough. And it's just embarrassing when we think about all the times when we just didn't trust him. We didn't trust him with the details because he's so thorough. He's so thorough. And okay, any other thoughts or questions?
That's it.